Hey everyone, this is the notes for ways that Earth's history is revealed. You should have your fill-in-the-blank note sheet in front of you, ready to go ahead and follow along with the video. The essential questions that you need to consider as you're watching this video and filling in your notes paper are: what evidence is there that reveals the life that once existed on Earth, and what are the different types of fossils? Those are important things to remember. So what happened to the dinosaurs? Well, 65 million years ago, they became extinct. And it's important to remember that to go extinct means that all of the organisms of that particular species are completely gone. It's not just a matter of the organisms like this particular dog died, or this particular group of dogs died, or this particular group of dinosaurs died, but all of the animals in a particular species are gone from the planet completely, never to return. To solve this problem of what happened to the dinosaurs in particular, since we weren't here then, is to scientists look for clues. So what do scientists think about the dinosaur extinction? We have a pretty good idea that a major event, like the crashing of one or more asteroids into the Earth, is what actually caused the dinosaur extinction. This changed the atmosphere, and the dinosaurs couldn't survive. Just like you and I need a particular mix of gases to breathe in order to survive, dinosaurs needed the same thing. And once that asteroid hit and changed the atmosphere, the dinosaurs were unable to continue living and thriving in that environment. So they all died out. Now, earlier in the notes, we said that the dinosaurs became extinct, and we're looking for clues to solve the problem of how they became extinct. Well, these are the clues. Fossils. They are remains of living things from the past, and those fossils tell us a story of what actually was happening at that time. Some examples of fossils that you'll see: obviously we have dinosaur bones, we have some sea creatures, we've got some shells, things that those creatures would have lived in. I'm sure everybody's seen some shark teeth before. And then here we have some little more subtle fossils. You may find fossils of plant life, you may find fossils of bones or skeletons of animals, lots of different things that tell us what happened in the past. So we have dinosaur bones, footprints, they're preserved in stone, shells, teeth. Anything that shows that a living thing used to be in that location is help for us to understand what happened to those creatures. So we know that we have fossils, but how do those fossils form? How does it go from a living creature to a stone that's showing us evidence that something happened in the past? Well, the conditions have to be just right in order for a fossil to form in rock. The soft parts, the skin and the hair and the muscles and the fat, those parts all decompose too quickly. Therefore, they only reveal traces and shapes of the hard parts in the fossils. Hard parts being bones, teeth, things like that, maybe shells, different parts of organisms that are specifically hard enough that they're not going to decompose quickly. As a result, we very rarely find fossils in rocks of soft parts of organisms. Primarily, it's just the hard parts, the bones and the shells and the teeth. Another piece of evidence that shows us information about the past are tree rings. So tree rings, what are they and what do they tell us? Well, you can see the tree rings vary depending on the tree growth. So during dry years, the tree rings don't grow as much. You can see, if you look right in here, towards the center, you have much thinner rings. Well, that gives us an indication about the climate at that time, and we can tell that there would have been less rainfall, so those are thin rings. Out here towards the outer portion, those are much thicker rings, which means it probably would have been a wetter season, meaning that we had a better growing season and the tree could grow more. So we can count back. I think everybody probably did this in elementary school. You can count back right here from the outside to the inside and count how old a tree is. So if you were to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many years, you can count back that number of years and know that that many years ago, that's how that growing season was. And this particular one right there would have been a relatively good growing season, especially compared with all of these rings, which are much thinner. More evidence of the Earth's past would be ice cores. Now, ice cores are not something you just find out in the wild. Ice cores are something that we have to actually drill and get the ice from places like Antarctica. Those ice cores are tubular samples, and they show us the layers of snow and ice that have built up over thousands of years. Those layers form a vertical timeline of part of the Earth's past. So, if you look, you would see a tube that looks sort of like this, and you would see layers on it. And the information we can get from that is if we have a thicker layer versus a thinner layer, it can tell us about the amount of ice that was deposited or the amount of snow. So that tells us a little bit about climate. In addition, ice cores can trap tiny bubbles inside of the ice. Just like if you put an ice cube in your freezer, sometimes you have air bubbles in there. Well, those air bubbles are, of course, whatever the air was when you froze the ice. So whatever air was around the atmosphere at that particular time when the ice was frozen in this ice core, that shows us a little snapshot of what the atmosphere was at that location at that time. And so that can give us information about what was going on in that area. Alright, after analyzing air that's trapped in ice cores, what can we actually learn about the atmosphere? Well, we can also see, in addition to just what the general makeup was, that increases in dust or ash in the ice show when major volcanic eruptions occurred somewhere on Earth, because, as you may know, once a volcano erupts, a lot of ash and dust goes up into the atmosphere. As it travels on the winds and things like that, it settles down, it would settle on the snow and ice, and then become frozen in there, just like dirt or anything else might get frozen when we have a snow day here in Charlotte. So we can learn and understand how Earth's climate might be changing, and we can then make predictions and perhaps see how it might change in the future. Alright, it's time. Let's talk fossils, specifically about some fossils now. Here's where the fun starts. Alright, what are the 6 types of fossils that form in rocks? The first type is molds and casts. A mold is a visible shape that was left after an animal or plant that was buried in sediment. It just then decayed away. In addition, a cast is a fossil that was going to form when this hollow mold becomes filled with minerals. So this hollow mold, and this cast is minerals that filled in and created this stone fossil. Here we have what's called a trilobite fossil. And you see this one is the mold, this one is the cast. The second type of fossils we're going to talk about are original remains. These are fossils of actual bodies or body parts of the organisms. Now, remember before we said that soft parts are usually not preserved, but they're not preserved in rock fossils. So there are actually 3 ways that soft parts are able to be preserved. The first way is in ice. It's one of the best preservers. It preserves the bones, muscles, skin, and even hair still in place. So it is a fossil. It's not still a living creature, obviously, but it's the actual creature itself. And what you have here would be an example of original remains that were preserved in ice. The second way that original remains can be preserved is in amber. Amber forms from resin from trees. It's almost like tree sap, where sometimes you'll see if a tree looks like it's almost bleeding kind of, where it has this sappy sort of stuff on the sides of it. That's a resin of sorts, and once it hardens over time, insects can get trapped in there. It hardens over time and it can become amber. Primarily these are just insects that are trapped here because it's only a small amount of stuff. So you're not going to have a woolly mammoth that's going to be trapped in amber, because just that much amber didn't exist all in one place at one time. If you've ever seen the movie Jurassic Park, this is a big one that they use in Jurassic Park. They say, oh, we drilled into the amber and we got the mosquitoes. The blood was still preserved in the mosquitoes inside of the amber, and they extracted the DNA then, and that's how they made dinosaurs. Well, that obviously is movie magic, but the mosquitoes would definitely, in fact, be trapped in amber, just as they were showing on the movie. The third way for original remains to be preserved is in tar. It's a thick, oily liquid that you see here, and these particular tar fields would be where animals could get stuck. They would go in thinking it was a water hole, and they'd get stuck. and they would struggle perhaps, but that's where they would final resting place. So you can see skeletons, hard parts primarily here, all of these things. You could have large animals like a woolly mammoth that would be trapped in those locations because they thought it was a drinking hole and they could go and get stuck. Another fossil type is the petrified wood that you see here. It's a stone fossil of a tree. It's when a tree becomes covered in sediment, so it would fall down maybe in a swamp or marsh. It would become covered in water, and then sediment would fall in over top of it, maybe leaves, maybe soils, and the water would then go through the sediment, it would go into the trees, and the minerals in the water would take the place of the cells of the tree. So we wind up with this mineralized stone fossil. Another type of fossil we can talk about are carbon films. When dead plants or animals decay, the carbon is left behind. These films show details of the soft parts of animals and plants that we can rarely see in other types of fossils. So here we can see the fossil of different types of plants, okay? And that's just the carbon that stained the rock basically and was left behind, and shows us what types of organisms, what types of plants and soft parts were at the location at a given time. Trace fossils include preserved footprints, trails, animal holes. These are fossils that are not the actual bodies or body parts of an organism, but just evidence that some organism was there at some point in the past. So if you see something like this going across a rock outcrop, perhaps there may be some footprints along the way, and that line might be tail marks. These are the types of things, or you could have a footprint as evidenced here. We compared these clues with the knowledge we have of modern animals to try to learn more about how organisms lived and acted in their environments at times before we were there to observe. Index fossils. Index fossils are important to us because they can give us a little bit more than just relative age. Index fossils are the remains of species that only lived for a short amount of time, geologically speaking, were numerous, means there were very many of them, and they were found in many places across the globe. Since we know they only existed for a short time, we can say that those organisms were fossilized at a specific time. Once they're fossilized inside a particular layer of rock, we know that that layer of rock, whatever layer they are in, is approximately the same age as the fossils that they were containing. So if we have a trilobite like this located in one of these layers of rock here, we can put a more specific number of years on this, and that way we know more about the layers above and below. So to review the essential questions, what evidence is there that reveals the life that once existed on Earth? And number two, what are the different types of fossils? You should be able to answer those at this time. If you can't, go back and watch the video some more and make sure you have that information down. Also be sure to click the links below here in Gaggle or search for those on Miss Gebhardt's wiki page so that you make sure you can look at those additional pieces of information that are not contained within this notes video.